Saturday. If you're watching this, then chances are your Saturday did not go quite as well as you had hoped. So, let some folks get in on the chat. Hopefully this air conditioner will start conditioning some air. I am sticking to everything I touch. Before I get into my normal rambling on, hoping everybody out there is still staying safe, wearing your mask where you're supposed to, getting your shots, doing all the good stuff. So, let's get into it. First of all, when we're talking about the aftermarket, we're really talking about claims and what kind of promises of what horsepower, what kind of gains at the drag strip, dyno results, things like that. Basically, everything that I've been hitting on with the R&D portion of the channel. And the weird thing about it is just how many, well, quite honestly, just how many manufacturers I found that, well, their claims didn't quite add up. And one of the biggest problems that I've run into is, well, with all of them. And with the EPA issues that are basically looming over our heads, and I've been getting touched up quite a bit with questions about that, it got me to thinking a little bit about, well, quite honestly, you know, what responsibility does the aftermarket have in all of this? But that aside, the claims themselves and how those claims affect your purchases is what I wanted to talk about. Primarily because as I've been researching and developing all these, or researching and in some cases developing some products for these cars, one of the things that I noticed is that a perfect example of this is cold air kits. Slash, what's up, man? The big one, the biggest offender in this is cold air kits. And the problem is, you know, every time I have debunked issues or claims rather with the aftermarket, the funniest thing is that I would still get folks basically telling me that I don't know what I'm doing, which is hysterical, all things considered. Even when I've debunked these issues, or I'm sorry, these claims and the issue of power production at the drag strip, I mean, where it really does matter, and still have guys tell me that the part did better on the dyno, so it must have done better. Even though I've proven that the part didn't work. So, at any rate, I wanted to talk about some of the parts that I know work and some of the parts that I know just flat out don't. So, let me check in with you guys real quick and then we'll start hammering on topic. So, Slash is in. CFL James got the thumbs up and the flex. I like it. Slick saying, what's up, man? What's up, Slick? Michael Corleone in the house saying, good evening, Professor Mason, with that flex. I like it. Boosted saying, hey, B Mason, what's up, Boosted? Mark saying, oh, yeah, it's time for his Mason stream. I like it. Kobe saying, what's up, B? Katie saying, say, what's up, Mason? Got the fist bump. And Kobe Warren's got the 2 flexes. I like it. So, hey, Superior, what's up, man? And Smoking05 saying, howdy, just got home from the track, ran 12 O's all day, so close. Yep. Oh, and we're also going to talk about the results of the tuning changes that I made to Little Miss Revlon, too. So, and if y'all hadn't seen the video, the tuning video, or at least the data logging video, this kind of will go in concert with that. So, let's start off with that. Tuning. Does it really make a difference? Well, the funny thing about it is that, yeah, it does, but not in the way that you might think. It's one of these situations where modern vehicles are already extremely finely tuned from the factory. There's not a lot you can do aside from tuning for a specific type of fuel that will actually yield significant gains in horsepower. Now, true, there are some platforms like LS platforms, Coyote platforms, things like that, where there is some manipulation still on the table where you can actually get a little bit more power out of them. But for the Mopars, for example, not really a whole lot. You got to keep in mind, I mean, I've talked about the tuning that I've done on my car and on other Hellcats. They don't pick up a lot with timing. You'd be surprised how little timing is in the engine tune, but how much time is spent on the transmission tune. And eerily enough, it's the transmission tune that makes all the difference in the world. Now, obviously, pulleys and, added boost running added boost with E85, obviously all really good things. But when people talk about tune, and again, the topic is really more, are the claims real with power? When people are talking about horsepower numbers, tuning doesn't always yield a power result, but eerily enough, you can see those results on the drag strip. So although tuners now anymore don't really like to give horsepower numbers, they don't really want to talk about how much that tune will get you per se, but when the tuner is actually tuning on the drag strip, they should be able to give you quantified data as far as, yes, this, we'll talk Hellcats, for example. This Hellcat in these conditions was running 11.0s, 1090s, basically like clockwork. Now it's running 10.8s. All right, that is a significant increase in performance, a definite advantage if you are running this thing at the drag strip. A lot of other parts can't do that. But again, that's a specialized trade, if you will, on the tuning side. And not everybody is very well versed in all platforms. For example, I might know my way around a Hellcat tune, but don't get me started on trying to tune a Coyote. I would turn that thing into mush, basically, or at least it would turn my brain into mush. So there are platforms that I'm very familiar with, others that I'm less familiar with. And when it comes to tuning, you've got to go with the right tuner. But tuning, definitely worth the money. If you've got an automatic, certainly worth it when you start getting into the transmission tuning side of it. Whoa, hey, wait a minute. Slash, thank you very much. Saying no question, just happy to finally catch a live. Thanks, Slash, man, I appreciate it. Well, if you got a question, man, throw it up here. I'd love to answer it for you. Let's see, let me get back where we are here. But it's fun. It's more fun for me to talk about the results at the drag strip, because those are the results that, well, quite frankly, I've been going after this entire time. I'm taking parts, putting them on a car and testing them, whether at the drag strip when I can, or I'm testing them on the street and Velocito, of course, closed course, absolutely. But looking for gains, either in KPA or timestamp improvements. And timestamp just means that if I hit the throttle at a specific mile an hour and I end the timestamp at a different mile an hour, did it take less time to get there? That's basically the thing that I'm looking at. And it's a kind of a sleight of hand way of street dynoing the car. If you are able to get to a speed faster, you have made more power. So let's get in here real quick. Eric saying, good evening, Professor B. Good evening, man. Marvel's saying, hey, what's up, Mason? What's up, man? Boosted Emmy's asking me to talk a little about timing and race fuel. Very good topic. So since we're still talking about tuning, this is a perfect time, no pun intended, to chat about that. So timing and race fuel. The reason why you can use more timing or get away with more timing with race fuel is that it is less sensitive to knock. Race fuel does not burn any slower or faster. You're looking at a specific flame front propagation at this point. What you're actually looking at is just the molecule itself being more resistant to spontaneously combust under a certain amount of heat and pressure. Higher octane, it just doesn't want to combust outside of being actually sparked by the spark plug. So in knowing that, it's a big misconception, by the way. A lot of folks think that race gas burns more slowly. No, as a matter of fact, if it's highly oxygenated, it will burn more quickly. It's just that the chemicals that make up the fuel itself are much more resistant to self-igniting under pressure and heat conditions. So in saying that, why can you run more timing with the race gas? That's the reason why. It's just less prone to detonation. By how much? Completely dependent upon the race gas that you're running. For example, if you're running a Sunoco brand fuel, you'll be very familiar with 260 and 260 GT, or 260 GT and 260 GT Plus. Basically, it's a 100 octane and a 104 octane fuel. 104 octane fuel is going to have a little bit more oxygenation because it has a higher ethanol content at about 13%, where Sunoco 260 GT would only have 10%. but both still very good fuels. The idea is that you tune your fuel to the engine combination that you have. Let me give you an example. If I have a 392 and I want to try to run that car on high, and let's say I've got the injectors and everything else to do it. We're just going to talk about the engine itself here. Let's say I want to run that thing on C16, which is a very well-known high octane fuel, 116 octane, if memory serves me correct. Or Q16, which is an ethanol-based fuel. We're going to run this thing on C16. And I'll tell you what, I'll take it a step further. Let's come up with, not even use that one, but it's really well-known. Any of the high octane leaded race gases, okay? Even taking the catalytic converters out of the equation, because you don't want to run leaded fuel with catalytic converters, what kind of timing could I get out of it? Well, you'd be interested to find out that there's not a lot more timing that I can run in that engine. The compression ratio isn't high enough, the RPM isn't high enough, and the camshaft profile obviously doesn't allow for the RPM to cover really the conditions that fuel will do well in. In essence, no matter what, even by throwing more timing at it, I will get to the point where I will have overtimed the engine before I will tax the fuel. So it's not necessary to run that high of an octane in that combination. And again, how much power will you pick up? Well, not a whole lot. You're talking about a combination with a real long runner with a real wide lobe separation angle that's making a lot of power, mind you, but it's just not going to be able to get away with a lot because the conditions don't allow for it. So let's talk about boosted applications now, because boost makes things a little bit easier, to be honest with you. Naturally aspirated cars, by the way, I typically, for something at less than 13-to-1 compression, would say 260 GT, 260 GT plus, something easily attainable, unleaded, preferably. Will do just fine. I mean, you got to tune for it, and realistically, I would say that about 12.5-to-1, 13.5-to-1 be as high as I would want to go on the street if it's tuned for that fuel. But you get the idea that if I try to run that fuel in a 392, it's just not necessarily going to make more power just because I can add more timing. Keep in mind, timing does not equal power. In other words, I can't just throw a fictitious number of timings at an engine and have it just pick up power. At some point, with that piston coming up, at this coming up phase, that thing's going to fire, that spark plug, and that flame front propagation is going to start to, where the flame front is going to propagate as that piston is coming up. The idea is to have peak pressure just as that crankshaft is coming right around, and you're about 10 degrees-ish. I know guys will argue, anywhere from 8 to 12 degrees past top dead center. If you can get away with having peak pressure at that point, then you're in pretty much good shape. Most of the time, street tunes will be around 20 degrees after top dead center for peak pressure to take place. So all that being said, when you look at the actual timing value, you may only be able to get to a certain timing value before, as that piston comes up, the flame front will have already propagated. Pressure will begin to increase in that space. And of course, it's going to increase much more rapidly as that piston comes up and compresses that mixture. And then at that point, if it's too early of a timing number, say, I don't know, just hypothetically 30 degrees of timing, 60 degrees of timing at wide open throttle, just because it's a big number, then your pressure is going to actually try to force that crank back, as opposed to just that crank leveraging down and firing down. So again, a lot of folks think that timing equals power. The trick is to run the least amount of timing that you can to get the pressure right where you want it. In other words, when that car is on the dyno, and it's funny too, because sometimes from y'all's point of view, the power curve will kind of start to come up and flatten out. You keep adding timing, it's about the same, and then it'll bump up just a little bit, or when it'll drop off just a little bit. But the rule of thumb is that if you make 2 timing changes and there's nothing to be gained on the dyno, then you just bring it back to where you found it and leave it alone. You don't want to leave it overtimed, because that can tax the fuel quality. But if you're on a loaded dyno, that's basically the rule of thumb. 2 timing adjustments, do one, don't really see an increase. As long as knock sensor sensitivity looks good, some guys will try to get away with another one. But I mean, as you're coming up on a number and you see that change really start to get narrow, the second that you get that next tune revision and it doesn't make any more power, then you bring it right back to where you found it. So that's typically how it'll work. Guys will just keep adding until that one adjustment makes no difference. Let's see. But good question. Definitely a good question. Let's see. I think I got to Kobe with the arm flex, superior fit, saying sup. Smoking a 5 saying, he's got the 12 all days, or 12 O's all day. Eric saying, good evening, Professor Mason. Good evening, Eric. I think I've already said all that to you guys. Okay, so already talked about timing. Kobe saying he beat a red eye yesterday at the track. He did an 11:02. He ran an 11:72. I've actually seen that many times. Mark saying, he said, I assume tuning would make the biggest difference when you start throwing headers and a cam at an engine. Well, no, tuning is mandatory at that point. So as far as another good example of, what gains can you expect out of different modifications, obviously cam, headers, things like that all come into play. And in that case, you definitely do have to have a tune. I mean, you cannot install those parts without a tune to optimize everything. But are headers always of a benefit? So we talked about tuning and really what you can get out of that. Now let's start talking about some actual hardware. Headers, intakes, throttle bodies, exhaust systems, cat deletes, all of that. Where do those products fall in line? Cold air intakes. Obviously, you guys have seen those videos and I've worn that out as much as I possibly can. But it does bear repeating, and I keep directing folks back to that last data logging session where I had pulled the filter out of the air box, and eerily enough, the car was making more power. It had a higher KPA, which means manifold pressure, which means boost. It had higher boost with the filter in. Now, we're not talking about 3-4 pounds here, but we're talking about more. We're talking about maybe 1/4 pound of boost, but 1/4 pound of boost can be 5 or 8 horsepower. So it really does make a difference, and it really does matter. Same goes for the aftermarket air filters. That green filter that I have, which I still have, and I think I've still even got the cleaning kit for it, gave the same results. Yet these manufacturers would sell you these parts, and they're not cheap, mind you. I mean, a green filter with the cleaning kit was like $70, if I remember correctly. Selling you that as a performance part. But with a car making 600 horsepower, in an airbox that is shared by 5.7 liters and 6.4 liters, making significantly less power, that filter did not do anything in terms of making that car make more power. The data would not allow it. So again, I find it interesting when manufacturers will lay out these claims. I'll take the part, test it, and to be honest with you, let me think about this hardware-wise. What parts have actually worked? Very few. And of course, anything that has to do with an air intake seems to always fall flat. Now, of course, y'all know my stance on intakes. If you like the sound and you want to put the thing on your car because it's going to have a sound to it, you're going to get a little bit of theater out of that, it's going to make the car more enjoyable, and you're going to have fun with it, gives it a little bit of underhood panache, whatever the case is, then yeah, absolutely go with it for that reason. But again, with all these manufacturers telling you that you're going to make more horsepower and your car is going to go faster in a time trial, well, what's the manufacturer's liability here? I mean, I get that they say up to, and it's that up to that always seems to get you. If I were to call Green Filter, or if I were to call any of the aftermarket manufacturers and say, well, the car didn't make any more power, there's always some reason for it. Well, what was the DA? What was the this? What was that? Now all of a sudden, now they got data. Now they've got something to talk about. Now, oh, well, if you were in the conditions that you were in, then that's not a good condition if you didn't hold your tongue the right way. And you start to get a whole lot of talking out of somebody's ass. So that's why I do all the testing that I do. And again, I haven't seen one that actually had a direct correlation between the part going on the car and then the car going faster. And I've been doing that for a long time with a lot of different platforms. But, oh, hang on a second. Time out. Slash, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Asking, would you be confident that Pike's Performance could help my Scat Pack get into the low 9s for 30 grand? No. Doubtful. Now, not impossible, but so here's the problem that you're going to run into. You got a Scat Pack, and that's the problem. You would be better served, and this is real time. I mean, you brought up money, so let's walk this back real quick. Scat Pack has an HP 70 transmission. It's going to be an HP 90 swap. That's lots of dollars. That's going to eat up a full $5,500 to $6,000, or basically 20% of your budget gone right off the bat for that swap. And it might even be more than that. And by the way, this is just parts cost. We'll get into labor here in just a minute. Cam and ported heads and intake stuff and everything else is going to start to creep in here too. A fuel system and everything else. 30 grand, it may not actually cover it. But here's the thing. Low 9s are cake with a Hellcat. In fact, they're nearly accidental. Let me give you an example. You take a Challenger Hellcat, and you add to your recipe. Well, remember the recipes, right? 10% lower, 275 upper, maybe or maybe not a cat delete, E85 conversion, FIC, that's fuel injector clinic, 127 pound injectors, or fuel 127 pound injectors, awesome injectors. Let's see, or let me rewind that. And a injected engineering twin pump conversion. You don't even need a 4 system for this. That's it. Alex tunes it. You pull some weight out of it, do some track tuning to get it right, and you're going to be running 930s, 940s with that thing in ridiculous air, and 950, 960 in that thing in kind of normal air. And it'll always be a Hellcat. Now, the problem is that you can say, well, it would still cost more to make that conversion. Maybe. But here's the thing. The Scat Pack would have to have, let's walk this through real quick. It would absolutely have to be on E85 because you're starting out with 11-to-1 compression. Then you're going to be playing with what boost do you run and what kind of boost would it be? Do you put a Whipple on the thing? Do you go E-Force, or do you go with a Pro Charger? Well, the problem is if you go with any kind of boost, that's going to be 12 grand-ish right there. Plus a cam, you're looking at another parts alone, say $2,500. Now you're at $14,500, call it 15. We've already established that the transmission is going to be at least another 5 grand in parts. So you're already sitting at 20 grand. Just to have the parts that the Hellcat comes with. Think about that for a minute. Just to have the parts that the Hellcat would already come with, you're into this thing $15,000 to $20,000. That's half of your budget. The cost to put a Hellcat into the mid-9s isn't all that much. The cost to put a Hellcat just in general into the 9s is even less than that. So, I mean, it's real. Honestly, once you start putting pulleys on Hellcats, it's hard to keep them out of the 9s. You know, Alex starts working his magic on one of those things, and, you know, I just got through data logging White Mare's dad's car, and its first trip to the track without any track track tuning whatsoever. White Mare goes out and drops a 960 in that thing. And by the way, the conditions were so bad they booted us because the fog came in, and I mean it was like you're standing in a shower. I mean it was terrible, super wet. So anyway, that is something that you got to consider. And I know, no Hellcat guy. Look, no, it's just the facts, man. To put the parts on the Scat Pack that the Hellcat already has will cost you more than if you just took $15,000 plus your car, picked up a Hellcat, took the other 15 and put it into the car. You would have a mid to low 9-second car, and it would be a Hellcat, which will actually hold its value. See, that's the other thing. You can put the Hellcat back to stock, or find a buyer for it and sell it a lot easier than you can a hot rodded Scat Pack. And Hellcats are just mad durable, man. So again, 15 grand just for the parts that the Hellcat already has. Take the other 15 grand with your car, buy the car, mod the Hellcat. You'll be a lot happier. Believe me, there's a reason why I bought a Hellcat. I wanted something that I could make go low tens, piss everybody off with a stock boost car, and make them wonder how the hell I did it on 93 octane with no boost aim, no Torco, no gas mix, no race gas mix, no nothing. And that's where we're at. That's what we did. So, and that's a stock, dude, listen, believe me, it is a stock boost Hellcat with so little done to it. Aside from a gear, there's nothing else done to that car. My trans tune, a little bit of an engine tune, and a little bit of, that magic Mason dust getting on there. And that's it. That's all that's done to that car. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. I know it's probably not the answer that you wanted to hear, but I'm here to look out for you. And, man, I just don't want to see you put your money in a place where you won't ever find it again, if that makes any sense. Kobe, thank you very much. Asking, does all pulley change need a tune? Yes! Or can you run one without a tune? Thank you for the super chat, Kobe. Starting to sweat after that one. Sorry, I just got back from the gym. You ever get out of the gym and you get cleaned up and you just can't quit sweating? That's where I'm at right now, man. So anyway, yes, there is no such thing as a tuneless pulley. Also, to that point, there's no such thing as a pulley that goes on your car without a set of injectors and a tune to go along with it that is tuned on an eddy current dyno or by somebody that has a very solid set of data for the injectors that you're going to run. I don't care if it's incognito that's telling you that it doesn't need a tune, it needs a tune. And I tell you what, if you, homework assignment, go back to the video that I did when I did the filter swap live. When I did we're going to do the swap, I took the filter out, I ran the car, I put the filter back in, ran the car, all of that. Go to the end of the video. It's about an hour long, but if you've already seen it or you haven't seen it, the part that I'm going to tell you about is at probably I'm stopped and I'm putting gas in the car or I'm doing something like that and I'm going through the data and I ask a question to everybody that was watching it. We had, this is like a normal chat, like 40, 50 people on there, I think at the time. How many of you would like to venture a guess and just throw out the number that we hit that night for our injector duty cycle? Now, keep in mind, we're at basically right at sea level and it was 34 degrees outside. And remember, we picked that night because we had very high air density. We were going to tax that filter as hard as we could. If that car was going to make any more power without a filter, that was the night. Actually ended up making less power without the filter. But does anybody want to post up? Do y'all remember what the injector duty cycle was? Keep in mind, stock injectors, stock boost, but I have tuned the car. Anybody want to? There it is, boosted Hemi, 97%. I know, I think boosted Hemi was on there and he just about had a freaking heart attack. So Kobe, the thing is just like Boosted Hemi posted back up, it was 97% injector duty cycle. Let me tell you what happens when you start to get too high with the injector duty cycle. Keeping this in mind, when Dr. Differential had sampled, let's just say, one of the Hellraiser pulleys, which was also at the time being touted as a no-tune pulley, when that thing was run under a microscope, that car was pulling timing like you would not believe. And the reason why is because the knock sensors were going batshit crazy. Not only that, but there's another thing you got to consider. The air charge, you will max out air charge tables by putting that pulley on that car at sea level. Now then, caveat, they are not steering you wrong if you live in an area. I can't believe I'm even going to defend them. If you live in an area that has a physical elevation of higher than, say, I don't know, 1,000 feet, 1,500 just to be safe. In that situation, you would have to be in conditions where the ambient temperature is so unbelievably low that you would never get to a density altitude that would drag you into the danger zone on that air charge table. In that respect, maybe the pulley does work, but you really got to check yourself. If you live in an area where you have an elevation that's less than 1,000 feet, would be my recommendation, just because of how DAs work. If you are at less than 1,000 feet, probably wouldn't suggest doing it, because we've got guys, I should say, down here that have given it a shot, and their cars are slower than a stock car, and just can't seem to figure out why, even though I've actually had a chat with a couple of them. Have they not seen this show? Anyway, that gives you any idea. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. So, man, I'm just looking out for you. There is no such thing realistically, no matter where you live, whether you live at the top of Mount Everest. Well, top of Mount Everest is a little bit different. If you live at high altitude, low altitude, it doesn't matter. If you are considering putting a pulley on the car, you must consider a tune and injectors, because the other side of this is, well, you've got to remember that the factory tune is lean from the factory. That car is set to about 12.7 to 1 air fuel ratio. That's right. It basically looks like an NA, a naturally aspirated air fuel ratio. So because of that, again, not necessarily the best idea to go cranking up the boost and increasing combustion chamber temperatures when the fueling in there is going to be maybe a little bit more volatile. That extra fuel helps to cool the combustion chamber, as well as make sure that you have enough fuel for combustion, but a portion of that fuel is there specifically to absorb heat. So anyway, man, I hope that answers the question. Hopefully I didn't beat that completely to death, but yeah, there's no such thing as a no-tune pulley. Again, and all you got to do is give Dr. Diff a shout. If he doesn't post if he doesn't post his number, just Google Dr. Differential Groves, Texas, and he'll tell you all you need to know about what happens if you try to run one of those types of pulleys on a car without a tune. The results can be not good. So, let's see. Oh, I just saw he's on there. Dr. Diff is in, saying, "Yo, B, what's up, my man? How you doing this evening?" Very good. Dr. is saying, what about E85 and timing? Doesn't E burn slower so you can put more timing in it due to the longer flame front? Not necessarily. So yes, and well, to answer the question, yes and no. E85 is less volatile. So for any volume of E85, let's say you have a Pepsi bottle full of E85, the fuel itself is less volatile. Being that it's less volatile does mean that it can have a slower propagating flame front, but you have more of that fuel in the cylinder. So because you have more of the fuel and it's obviously atomized, with boost, you are exposing it to the same amount of air. That flame front should be able to propagate equally as quickly. The thing is that the fuel itself, even though the flame front may be roughly the same speed, is much, much more immune to the effects of pre-detonating. One, because it helps to cool the combustion chamber quite a bit more. By at least it has 30% more mass in that combustion chamber. That mass absorbs that heat, which again, it's a secondary, but it does help to quell, if you will, the tendency for a combustible fuel to pre-ignite, or to self-ignite, I should say. In this case, it would be pre-ignition. So because of that, you can run more timing, but it's not usually by a whole lot. You might be able to get away with 2 or 3 degrees more timing, but again, it's just because it is more resistant to knock. It's not the flame front propagation. And keep one thing in mind. I know that when I'm trying to explain tuning, I try to explain to folks that you have to really slow the process down in your head. The mechanics don't know how fast this stuff is taking place. In its mind, if you will, I mean, the piston's coming up super slow, bing, spark plug goes off, flame front propagates in slow motion, pressure starts to build, the cylinder comes up under partial pressure resistance, maximum pressure is achieved, chemical reactions are happening like crazy, magic things are happening, and the piston starts to be driven back down, the exhaust valve starts to crack open, exhaust gas comes flying out of the thing, and then the whole system propagates and reciprocates, I should say. The amount of time that it takes, even though it's maybe slightly slower, I don't think it's much slower with the 85, it happens so quickly though, that the difference, the delta in flame front propagation is really not what you're timing for. You're timing for the actual resistance to self-ignite. But awesome question. And I bet that helps out some other guys too. So very good. Let's see. Mark's saying, I would assume timing would make the biggest difference. Oh, tuning. Oh, tuning or timing? Hang on. Dang it. Tuning, yes, but you're also correct to know that timing would make the biggest difference when you do start throwing headers and a cam at the engine. Not necessarily headers, but the cam itself. And then you can start getting into dynamic compression ratios and things like that when you start getting into camshafts. Believe it or not, you are effectively reducing your compression ratio with a camshaft. I know a lot of people just go, what? That is correct. The longer your intake duration is, and the further that intake valve is open past bottom dead center, the less you will have in a dynamic compression. But with that lower dynamic compression, you do gain pumping efficiencies, which make more power. So weirdly enough, you run a high compression ratio in a performance engine, like an obnoxiously high compression ratio, to then run a camshaft that is effectively large enough to lower your dynamic compression back down into a serviceable zone where you will have the same dynamic compression but with longer duration, effectively lowering your pumping losses and creating an environment to have more air in the chamber. Is that enough to like what? What did he say? I know. It's counterintuitive, but that's exactly why you do it like that. Goldberg saying, B Mason Live doesn't get any better. I like it. Arm flex. I love it. And again, Slash, thank you very much, brother. Donald saying, hey, B, what RPM range Sniper and Warlock cam run best at? They're going to float around in... So a Sniper is going to check in at about 6,300 RPM. A Warlock is going to kick that out to about 6,450, 6,500 RPM. Love me. I'm dying to have somebody run that Warlock because that thing is sick. Again, Dr. Diff is checking in. Answered those. What's up, man? Eric saying hi. Gordon saying, what up, B? Man, I think my fuel pump is getting weak. Just curious if there's anything out there you'd recommend. Well, I mean, if it's a stock car, I would stay with stock. You know, I wouldn't really go crazy with fuel pumps. You really don't need it. Frederick saying, what's happening, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. Riff saying, hey, B. Let's see. Dr. is saying, I'm very familiar with VP MS109. My rule of thumb is that I usually can run another 3 to 5 degrees, although we can usually lower the NOx sensor sensitivity and put 3 degrees of 5 gallons to low fuel. That is correct. Yeah, the funny thing is, like I say, with timing, the walking around number with race gas is typically 2 degrees. You can kind of get away with 2 degrees typically with race gas, and that'll be a fairly safe place to start. It doesn't put it like it's not necessarily putting it in a situation where it's going to be at risk, if you will. Hopefully that makes any sense. Eric's asking if adding a supercharger kit will devalue your 392. It depends a lot on I'll put it to you like this. It depends a lot on the market that you're in. Some guys, if some guy is specifically looking for a supercharged 392, then no, maybe not. But that's a very narrow market that you're looking at that point. So I would say that in general, though, yeah, it's going to make it a lot less attractive for folks to want to buy a Scat that's already got all that work done to it. Now, again, if you find somebody that's just really wanting that car, that specific car with a supercharger, then they'll pay for it. But sometimes you got to wait on that. And it just, do you want to hold on to something like that when you've got that much cash tied up in it? It can be kind of a tough call. Let's see. Oh, Doc Div's saying, depending on RPM, lower timing at lower RPM, more timing past peak torque. That is correct. And typically what you'll see is it's known as a timing bathtub. You'll have a rising value that'll kind of maybe go down slightly at peak torque. It'll come up, go eat, and then start rising again after that. And the reason for that is you're pulling just a little bit of timing at peak torque because that's where your highest cylinder pressure is. So because of that, you're gonna you don't need the extra timing. The thing about timing that's funny is you want to optimize timing, but you can easily overtime an engine. And it's funny, when you're at peak cylinder pressure, you don't need the extra timing. At peak cylinder pressure, all of the molecules are the most tightly packed together. More timing isn't going to do you any good. If you have more timing at that point, it will actually act as though it's overtimed. So instead of adding timing, you take away because the conditions simply don't need, or more importantly, think of it like this, they don't want the extra timing at that point. It's not going to do it any good. In fact, you can lower your peak torque if you try to keep adding timing at that value. But I will tell you this, when you start backing timing out, that's the first place that you back it out, but it's the first place that you're looking at. Horsepower, you can always tune for that, and the car is going to be a lot less, or the engine, I should say, will be a lot less sensitive to timing way up there. It's not going to be as sensitive, but because cylinder pressure isn't as high. But you're looking at that peak torque number, and you're going to add a little bit, you're going to get to that point where you're not going anywhere else with that. That's when you drag the timing back a couple of degrees. Everything else on the big end you can play with, but you always look at peak torque first, because you get that wrong, that's kind of sometimes where things break. Rick is asking about, or saying, I don't know if it would lower it, but it definitely won't raise it. Talking about supercharged stuff. Well, you got to remember that, a lot of guys are looking for something stock. Not everybody's looking for a modded car. Not everybody wants a modded car too. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt, if you will. Let's see. Doc saying on Rick's car at 19 degrees, it made best power, then added 1 degree and it lost 10 horsepower. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it can sometimes be a real fine line between being timed just right and being overtimed. Some combinations are going to be more sensitive. In fact, you're running a long runner intake like on a 392, they can get pretty sensitive to timing changes once you start getting further out in the RPM range. KDC's asking, hey Mason, can you explain the difference between stage 1, 2, and 3 cams? Well, kinda. The thing is that a stage 1 cam will offer a bump in performance without any loss in drivability. A stage 2 cam will add power above and beyond what a stage 1 will give you, but it will be at the limit of what you would consider drivable. It may work well with a stock converter, but barely work well with a stock converter. You may not need a gear, but you probably would be better off with a gear with a stage 2. It's kind of a tweener thing. Stage 2, they used to call them middle of the page cams. Basically because if you're looking at a page in a catalog, it'd be like anything in the middle couple of inches on that page. A stage 3 cam is going to require a converter. It's going to require a gear change. It's going to require the buyer to have to, how's the best way to put this? Should I say put up with, compromise what they feel good drivability is. In other words, drivability, idle quality will be suspect at best in some cases with stage 3. In other words, it's going to chop its ass off, which in small doses can be a lot of fun, but the reality is that it can get real old real quick, and when you try to race car your street car, that can sometimes be a bit of a problem. So drivability is not only compromised, but it can kind of get on your nerves after a while. So each combination is going to be a little bit different, but what I want to try to convey in terms of like what's the difference in like duration. Again, each combination is going to be a little bit different because duration starts to, now you got to get lobe separation angle into the conversation. So you can't really talk about it in terms of duration and things like that. But I'll put it to you like this. In walking around terms, we're going to talk about a cam with a 114 degree lobe separation angle. Because 114 degrees is a fairly common, or I'm sorry, let's do 113 degrees. 113 is a fairly common LS lobe separation angle. You'll see that a lot with most of the aftermarket camshafts out there for fuel injected cars. In that respect, on a 113, if you had a 215, 220, 222 cam, that would be a stage 1, basically. For a stage 2, you would start to look at like a 220, 222, 228, 230-ish cam. That would be like a pretty solid stage 2. A stage 3 is going to start to get you, and this is for Mopars, by the way, but LS kind of the same. A stage 3 would start somewhere around 230 on the intake, 236 on the exhaust. For most LS platforms. For a Mopar, I would say that with that same lobe separation angle, anything greater than 224, 232 would start to put you into stage 3. The problem is that you start to run into RPM constraints. The exhaust duration plays a huge role in the RPM footprint, the RPM profile, if you will, for a camshaft. So when you start getting into these bigger duration numbers, the problem is that you start to kill some of the power down low. You're trying to drag that power further to the right on the chart, and that can create some issues for you too. You've got a heavy car, you've got to have that torque down low with those tighter lobe separation angles, but more importantly with those shorter duration numbers. So anyway, hopefully that answers the question. In general, stage 1, very drivable. Stage 2, getting to the point where it's a good compromise. Stage 3, you're going to have to be swapping out other hard parts to really get the most out of that camshaft. And again, Slash, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Ripped is saying he went 139 in the quarter. Very nice. Kobe, again, thank you very much for that, buddy. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Oh, Slash is asking, if I can't get my Scatty into the low 9s with 30 grand, how about 10-1? 10-1, shouldn't be a problem at that budget. But again, I mean, we're still talking about a lot of the same parts. If you want to keep the Scat, you're gonna putting the thing into the 10s isn't going to be a problem. Man, it's just that the problem is that you can go 10-1s with a stock Hellcat. I mean, I've already proven it. Guys, I've got video after video after video after video of that car running 10. I don't know, that car loves running 1017s in good weather. It is a 1020 car in 0 DA. So I guess when I'm putting it like that, yeah, you can. I mean, yeah, in the 10s for sure. Supercharged on the Echo with, meaning E, just on E85, with, I don't know, an F1 with a race intercooler, cam swap. You can get it there, man. I'm not saying that you can't, but damn, I mean, you've really got, I'll put it like this. You've really got to want to do it with a Scat Pack. And you got to remember, man, you're living in a world where a really solid cammed Scat Pack will be doing good to get into the mid-10s. And that's pushing it. That's with a lot of weight reduction. For some reason on the Scat Pack on the 392 side, that whole platform just has not been all that well sorted by the aftermarket. The trucks are doing a great job of it, but there's some predictive shift and some other protocol in that operating system, I think, that may make it a little bit easier for the trucks to get there. But 392 has been a little bit tough. So anyway, yeah, if you go with, and I've put together packages for folks working at Pites. Cam profile is basically already there. Could probably maybe bring the exhaust duration down on one of those cams, but it's just going to be tough, man. And again, yeah, you can get it into the 10s. Actually, that's really not a problem at all. How deep into the 10s is going to start to hang a little bit on parts durability. With the HP70, I mean, you may get away with a few hits at that power level on a sticky tire, but you're still going to have to hit it with a sticky tire, and that's what starts to break parts. So again, man, I don't want to steer you the wrong way. Just know that you're really pushing the envelope trying to get a car down that low on any budget, to be honest with you, primarily because it's just tough to get it there, man. Not impossible. I mean, you can cubic dollar the thing away, but again, you start looking at your goals of what you want to run with the car. And I mean, dude, a pulleyed Hellcat, just a 285 upper running on pump gas, a little bit of boosting to be safe. You got a pulley, injectors, tune, sticky tire, 9s. That's it. That's literally all you need. Again, tune, injector, pulley, tires, maybe a little bit of weight reduction, but it's guaranteed to run 9s in good air. So that's the thing that you're looking at. And again, I mean, you're not talking about a ton of money. And I mean, if you've got a Scatty that you just don't owe a lot of money on, it probably would be better for you to just take the money, take the Scat, and knock it out. And by the way, if this is a NAG 1 car, I really wouldn't chase it, to be honest with you. Just my personal, just what I've seen. Anyway, what works and what doesn't. Jermaine, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that very much. Let's see. Bear with me here. Hang on. Bear with me. What happened? Here we go. Dang it. This thing's not slipping through. Here we go. Again, Kobe, thank you very much, man. I appreciate the contribution, buddy. Riv saying, never would have run 139 miles an hour in my Hellcat if it weren't for that JLT intake. That's funny. Doc Div saying, fuel injector clinic or connections? Connection, not clinic. I misspoke on that. Either one are good. Injectors, yep. I like Fuel One. Keith over there sells a match set. I mean, he'll flow match all of them before he sends them, which is pretty cool. Rift is saying 6 large to get his Hellcat into the 9s, which is about par for the course on that. HU37 saying up 2 is a joke. You can do 3 dyno pulls with stock and 3 with an upgrade. You take the highest horsepower from the upgrade and the lowest without to get a big gain. Yeah, that has happened in the past, man. Hilton's asking, can I talk about the trans tune on the 5.7? Yeah, the 5.7, I mean, it's not a bad tune in general. In fact, it's pretty good. The 5.7 is the transmission tune. I mean, you can adjust it the same way you would adjust one for a 6.4. You're just going to bump up output shaft RPM. You can give it a little bit more line pressure if you want. It's not really all that necessary. Really looking at the way that tune is set up, you know, you bump up output shaft RPM by, you know, just raising the RPM up to where it'll shift at 5,500 consistently. I've seen some 5.7s trying to shift at $5,000. These are in the trucks primarily. But the main thing is if you've got the thing on a dyno, find out where it's making peak power and then adjust your shift points accordingly. Really don't have to mess too much with pressures per se. In some areas it will help. Shift timing will help a little bit too, just to make the shifts a little bit more crisp and a little bit quicker. But for the most part, the 5.7's got a pretty solid trans tune. The 8 speeds are pretty nice, actually. In fact, the trans tune in Buffy, the White Buffalo, that thing does pretty good. The work truck's not that shabby. So I will say this, that the latest operating systems are pretty nice in terms of the shift quality. So they've gotten better. 2014's definitely needed a little bit of extra love, but 2017's and up, at least so far as I can tell, actually work very well. Smoto 5 said, I need to borrow some magic mason dust to get me a 10th for an 11.9. Yeah, no kidding. I don't know. I need to figure out where I hit it because I hit it from myself. Yeah, this last trip to the drag strip. So the throttle settings did make a difference, although it wasn't as much of a difference as I was hoping. And but then in going back and looking at the DA, it had actually, all in, it had picked up about maybe 1/3 of a tenth, which would equate to maybe a little bit better than 1/2 tenth. I'm sorry, 1/3 of a tenth in the 60 foot, which would have made up about 1/2 tenth at the back half of the track. But here's the thing, my 0 to 30 time, 0 to 30 mile per hour time on the timestamps on the data logs from Moparmageddon versus last night, you may be surprised to find out that last night was consistently about 1/4 of a tenth quicker in way higher DA with horrible air quality. And I wish I could convey just how bad the air quality truly was. I mean, it was terrible to say the least. When you get punted out of the track, I mean, basically they shut the track down because the fog is coming in sheets and it's sticking to everything and it's making everything wet and sticky. That's a bad thing. And that's basically what we were running into. So, that's what we ran into. Those are the conditions we were running in. I wasn't really much lighter than I was. I was maybe 10 pounds at the most lighter, but that's not going to make much of a difference in terms of fuel and where all that was at. Bottom line is that the changes did help. So I made one extra change to the tune, tried to make a pass, and they kicked us out while we were in the staging lanes. So didn't get a chance to run that tune, but playing around with the car on the way home. Car likes it a lot, so we're just going to leave it at that. Let her eat. Hopefully be able to get, I don't know, hopefully the track's open next weekend. And if it is, be able to see what the car runs. We'll find out then. Mark saying, what manufacturer sells a little bit of that magic mason dust? I'm sure I'll have my 5.7 gapping everyone on the street up here in Chicago. I love it. Doc Div saying, without the tune, it'll piss those knock sensors off for sure. And then there's Boosted Emmy saying that 97% on that humidity. Let's see. Rift saying there was a girl with a 392 Scat Pack last night that ran 11.3 with just a tune on E85. You can do it. In fact, some of the latest Scat Packs have got a real nice cam profile in the operating system, and they do run good. But yeah, a tune on E85, I mean, you can definitely pick up a little bit. Hell, look at what Racer X's wife's car did. I mean, you know, Racer X and I both ran an 1157 with that car, stock tune on a drag pack with just the seat removed. So yeah, and she ran a 52. So I can definitely see in really good air being able to pull another couple of tenths out of it. That shouldn't be a problem. Oh, H saying another gimmick is adding fine print. One company claimed you could gain 13 horsepower with their shorty headers. If you read the fine print, you'll find out that you also need their throttle body and intake. Yeah, it's funny how many of their other parts you need. This combination will yield you 13 horsepower, hopefully up to 13 horsepower, right? Yeah, you might get that number. You might get to 13, but maybe not. Boosted saying my car ran 97% injector duty cycle on Demon injectors last Sunday with 80 psi fuel pressure. Yeah, been telling y'all, man, got to get them thousands. Although, well, you're at 80, you may have a little, well, I don't know. 80 doesn't give you a whole lot of overhead. You got a little bit left, but not a ton. Let's see. Jerry's asking, how much does it cost to get your 392 intake cleaned up and ported for an 85 millimeter throttle body, including throttle body? You would have to ask Dr. Differential because he handles all the pricing for those modifications. Oh, and Dr. Div saying, yeah, and on that air charge table, it will carry the bottom number to whatever boost it is going to. That means no bueno. So what he's talking about is, you know, he's looking at the actual pulley. Like, if you don't tune for a pulley, what would happen? Well, the air charge table maxes out. And when the air charge table maxes out, you now have a timing value. Now, let's say that timing value is, I don't know, 13 degrees of timing. But you happen to be running, I don't know, 16 pounds of boost. And you're running pump gas. Now, let's say it's 93 octane instead of 91. Well, that's too much timing even for 93 octane, and there is a chance that things can go crazy bad at those levels. So it depends on so many different factors. It depends on where the timing is coming in, where it's making the extra boost. There's a lot that goes into it. And the problem is that the fallout to this, a lot that goes into it, isn't cheap. It's not like, oh, darn, well, it just didn't work. The pulley is what I'm talking about. When things go wrong with these cars, they pop the ringland on the piston itself. This is something that used to happen quite a bit. And it's something that when it does happen means that you now basically have to do a complete rotating assembly, or could be doing a complete rotating assembly. And that's if you get lucky. Cylinder head's going to have to be repaired or replaced in most cases. It's a bad time. So again, and again, that's also if you don't run bigger injectors. So anyway, I always try to err on the side of caution when it comes to that kind of stuff. From an MDE standpoint, mechanical design engineering standpoint, you have to look at all of the conditions that power plant will be exposed to in both use, misuse, and abuse conditions. And in this case, you're looking at extremely high cylinder pressures, not just kind of high, but extremely high. You have to be able to fuel for it. You have to be able to account for the extra air that can come in lower density altitude conditions. And if you don't, that's where you're going to start running into problems. Let's see. Kobe saying, thank you. I know we have a new viewer and a buddy wanted me to ask you that. Very cool, man. Thank you very much for the new viewership. Let's see. Ed saying, hey B, I'm new here and bought a Diablo tuner and used the 93 octane tune. I only have cold air intake and Flowmaster Outlaw exhaust. I was wondering if a custom tune would help me at all and how much would that run? Well, if you've already got everything done to the vehicle and it obviously doesn't require any unlocking, so I'm guessing it's either pre or 2014 and older, or you just already have the computer unlocked. Would a custom tune help? Well, yeah, because a custom tune is going to get into the transmission timing. And that's really where a lot of the gains are going to be had. So in terms of, will you pick up more power? Well, maybe not, but a custom tune will make sure that that power is safe. There are some things that can pop up in canned tunes that will scare the living hell out of some tuners, primarily with torque management, for example, being turned completely off. Bad idea with these Hemis. You don't want to turn it completely off. And by the way, yes, I've done all the track testing with all of the torque management on, with all of the torque management off, and with all of the torque management in between being on and off. And I can tell you that there is not enough of a difference between having torque management on and torque management off, unless we're talking about a drivability issue. And then I always recommend, if nothing else, leave the external torque management in play. At least you'll be pulling timing. That's a good thing. But I never turn it all the way off. Again, just a bad idea all the way around. But that's where you're going to get the most benefit. So yeah, canned tunes are okay. Just make sure you data log them, because not all canned tunes work equally as well. I've kind of been down that path before. I've data logged them. I've tested them. Keep in mind, these are some older canned tunes, but most of them have been lacking. I'll put it to you that way. Ripped is saying, I would think a trans tune would be the biggest difference. It does make up a huge difference. Let's see. CJ saying, Modern Red got his 392 intake manifold ported and polished. How did they polish it? I would love to see that. Along with a ported Hellcat throttle body, and that combination with the CNC ported heads really woke up the 5.7 Hemi. Very cool. Ripped saying, at Edward. Let's see. CJ saying, hey B, what's up? Brother, how's it going? What do you think of the RPM Act? Well, so, I mean, we can talk about the RPM Act. The RPM Act is something that is put in play to try to get legislatures involved in the EPA's mandates for tuning and aftermarket parts and things like that. My view of the RPM Act is maybe a little bit different than you might think. So let's chat about that for a minute. Regardless of the reasons why we are where we're at now, with this whole EPA's re-envisioning of what some of their rulings have been on the aftermarket. First of all, I don't like reimagining or revisioning, or however they put it, laws, or more importantly, how laws are enforced. That's not good, because now you're taking something that was legal and you're making it illegal in essence. You can't change the rules of the game mid-play, all right? That's not going to fly. And that's where a lot of folks are pretty pissed off. Now then, why are we here? Although it doesn't matter, it comes into play here because the aftermarket has been kind of thumbing their nose at the EPA for quite a while. Let me put it to you like this. And this, it's funny you mentioned this, because this may have just fired off a new monologue. Okay, so if I don't get to y'all, I apologize, but let's talk about this. Because CJ brings up something that is kind of an interesting topic when you start looking at it from a certain point of view with this whole EPA thing. Let's imagine you're the EPA. The EPA has been around for a long time before this RPM Act thing. But just understand that it has always been illegal to remove the catalytic converters from your vehicle. It's only been fairly recently, say as of, I don't know, 2005, that removing catalytic converters, actually before that, in 1989, with the actual introduction of some of the when the manufacturers adopted the biscuit style catalytic converter, it's at about that time where folks figured out pretty quickly that catalytic converters didn't really cost any power. Once the pancake style converters were done away with, restrictive catalytic converters really didn't come into play. As a matter of fact, I've proven time and time again that catalytic converters, removing catalytic converters don't do any good. And that's one of the biggest pushes that I've had is don't remove your cats. Whenever we've removed cats with the Hellcat, this is kind of me sidebarring here for a minute, but when we've removed cats from Hellcats with low boost applications, they got slower. For whatever reason, it's not back pressure and all that stuff. Whatever with that. I've got my own theories with that, but it's because it's supercharged and because it's a positive displacement supercharger. I get it. It's kind of an isolated reasoning, but anyway, long story on this. Didn't make any difference on the 392, aside from being able to tune out catalytic converter overtemp protection, but even that you're never going to hit with an NA car, typically. So that's a long way. It's like going around my ass to get to my elbow to tell you that the manufacturers of these parts will tell you that your vehicle will pick up power if you remove the cats. The general consensus, if you ask anybody, is that will removing catalytic converters make my car make more power? And they go, oh yeah, man, catalytic converters are restrictive. I've proven on the dyno, I've proven on the drag strip, I've proven with time stamping that removing catalytic converters from a 392 doesn't make it any quicker. Look at the fact that Mrs. X's car, stock catalytic converters, runs 1150s. Ray's 1320s, stock catalytic converters, 1140s. Okay, removing the catalytic converters, those cars don't go any quicker. But the manufacturers are selling you a part. And if you ask somebody on the other end of a telephone, or if you were to have asked somebody, how much power does removing the cats give you? They might say, I don't know, it might give you 10 horsepower. That's them telling you that it gives you 10 horsepower. In the ears and in the brains of the consumer, it might give you 10 horsepower means that it gives you 10 horsepower. Like, oh, the manufacturer is trying to be sly, but because the law, but if they're telling me it's 10 horsepower. That's the way people think, man. I'm telling you every time. You get what I'm saying. But it's true of all the other parts that you buy. That cold air intake gives you up to 25 horsepower. That cat delete gives you X amount of powers, what have you. The tune gives you something. So the thing is that the EPA is coming down on tuners because they are a defeat device. And what that means is that, or I'm sorry, they are perceived to be a defeat device. Although there are far more things that the tuning software does that has nothing to do with defeating catalytic converters. I'm a perfect example of that. My car has nothing on it and nothing has changed in the tune that would affect that car's emissions in any way, shape, or form, even though I could. I know that it doesn't do any good. I guess where I'm going with this is, let me kind of get to the point. Aftermarket manufacturers need to say, removing your catalytic converters is not a performance enhancement. Unless your car is so far deep into the performance envelope that you are literally only able to run the thing on a racetrack realistically. In other words, you're caged up, it's a race car at that point, and it's not going to ever be registered again, then having cats is, at that point, just a component that can fail. And can lose you a race only because it fails, then yeah, you can remove it and put a catless pipe on it. But if the car is being run on the street, or even in that environment, you're not going to gain performance by removing a catalytic converter. That's it. And for a gasoline engine, there's nothing else you're really going to do. I mean, EGRs and things like that, you can try to manipulate them and try to play with them. I have done that God bless, I've done that so much with Fox body stuff to where it would, do you think this is boring? Try going in and doing a complete EGR delete on a Fox body car while it's sitting on the dyno, only to have it make an identical number on the dyno. This is something that I did a lifetime ago at this stage of the game. I did so much exhaust testing and all that other kind of weird emissions style adding and subtracting on Fox body platforms, heads cam type cars, and oh my God, it got to the point where I was going, does anything really gain horsepower with these things? So anyway, there's some sleight of hand though that comes with this. In certain very specific circumstances, yes, you might pick up a little bit of torque with a cat delete somewhere. But we're not talking about gobs of torque. We're not talking about 25 foot-pounds of torque. We're talking about 2.5 foot-pounds of torque. And that's even within the noise of a dyno, which means that it's within a dyno variance. So does it work? No, it doesn't. But the manufacturers need to be on board and they need to be getting the message out. Catalytic converters are on your gasoline fueled vehicle for a reason. They are not a power suck. They're no detriment and they keep the air clean. And there you go. And realistically, if you're running metal substrate catalytic converters, that just is fine. I mean, at least you're giving it a go, right? But I mean, unless you're running a fuel, again, it'd have to be a race fuel, leaded gas type of a scenario. There's no reason to remove them. But again, I feel like there's a certain onus on the aftermarket to not be so cheeky about this stuff. Like, oh yeah, well, cat pipe, loud, I get it, okay? But, and don't get it twisted. I'm a big fan of, personal property rights. I mean, if I own this drill, okay, I can do pretty much whatever I want to this drill, right? I mean, it's my drill. If I want to put, I don't know, a bigger motor in it, make the thing run on diesel fuel or whatever I wanted to do to this drill, I can do it. Well, the difference between this drill and a car is that a car is, it's out on public streets, it's doing all this other stuff, whereas this drill would just be like a race drill, okay? It's only going to be run in my shop, and it's not going to be, for public consumption. But at what point can I not do that? I mean, what if I made this thing and it ran on, I don't know, some kind of like nitromethane or, something that's probably not really good for the environment. I mean, at what point is it not a personal property thing and it's a you're polluting thing? I don't get it. The other funny thing about it is that, we've talked about where the whole issues or where these issues started to come from and where the whole story got started. It's on the diesel side. And, that's one of those areas where, one bad apple can kind of spoil the whole bushel. And that's in essence what may have happened with this, but it did spill over into the gasoline side. And it just needs to be made clear that the gasoline side, a lot of guys aren't removing catalytic converters. In fact, there's far less emissions equipment on gasoline engines. In fact, so little that you haven't even heard me mention about smog pump, EGR valves, or anything other than a catalytic converter. Because these cars are so efficient now that they don't need those parts anymore. The only thing that they're going to run are catalytic converters. And that's cool. And since we've already proven that cats don't really remove power, the aftermarket needs to say, look, keep it green, keep it mean and green, make all the power that you want. Just, if you end up removing the catalytic converters, it's on you. But the fact that I can defeat, or I can tell a computer that not to worry about the catalytic converters or to not turn on the rear O2s until a certain point, that's irrelevant. I mean, there's a ton of reasons. And by the way, it really doesn't matter because I can defeat the O2 sensor problem with the catalytic converters either on the car or off the car mechanically. Now, I don't even have to have anything in the tune that I can make something that'll defeat it. In fact, pretty easy to do. That mechanical defeat device is actually more, there's more malicious intent, okay, if you want to put it that way. But it's more insidious than just having access to some parameters in a computer. So anyway, kind of a weird thing for me. I look at it, I can see it from both sides. I think that once we move past the fact that this really is a personal property thing and that most hot rodders don't even get to that point where they're removing the catalytic converters anyway, this is not something, some big issue. I think that we just need to get past, and when I say that, it shouldn't be as big of an issue to the EPA as it is. Hell, most of us take such good care of our cars. They're less polluting while making more power than a lot of these other cars are. And, that needs to be taken into account as well. So I got all kinds of feelings about that. But let's see. Riv's asking, do you think running my pedal commander on my 6-speed SRT8 could hurt the clutch? Not at all, since it will be spinning faster when it catches. No, because, you could just give it more throttle and it would do the same thing. So, nope. Carry on. And again, Slash, thank you very much for that contribution. And again, hopefully that answers the question, man. I just looking out for you, man. I don't want to see you burning a bunch of money on something and it maybe not work out as well as you would like. Dr. Def, man, thank you very much. Saying everybody hit that like button. That alone will definitely help the professor out. And best part, it's free. Yeah, so definitely hit that like button, guys, if you can. Do me a solid on that. If you are a subscriber, please make sure that you are hitting that notification bell. I have learned a lot about YouTube lately, and a few things are a lot more important than you might think. So hitting the notification bell, not just being a subscriber, but hitting the notification bell is huge. That way you can see the different content that I put up. And hitting the like gets the word out a lot easier and a lot quicker through YouTube. So yeah, definitely please hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. That helps a lot too. But the main thing is just that bell thing. And the funny thing is you might be subscribed to the channel. And if you're one of the longtime subscribers from before the bell, if once the bell was put into place, if you didn't hit the bell afterwards, then it's like you're a subscriber, but you don't get the content. I can't tell you how many times I've been told that I've put out a video and nobody knew that I put out a video. And there have been YouTubers that I'm a longtime subscriber to that have put out videos that I didn't even know they put out a video. And it's because of that. I didn't have that bell notification thing. And then once I did that, then, basically everything they ever did blew up my inbox. And I was like, get what you pay for, I guess. Get what you ask for, I should say. But at least now I know when they post stuff up. It was weird. I didn't even realize, didn't even dawn on me. And then it was, oh, wait a minute, I'm subscribed, but the bell isn't automatically, it doesn't automatically notify you. Weird, right? But that's how it works. But I'll tell you what, I was getting suggested stuff from all kinds of people I've never even heard of. Question mark. Anyway, Mark's saying, hey man, I have a built-in Cam 392 that I plan on boosting. What are your thoughts on a ported 6.1 intake? They're good. I would say extrude honed 6.1 intake would be significantly better. Man, they're good. They're really good. It's a little bit more of an old school approach. Though I like the 6.1 manifold in general for boosted cars primarily because they just make a lot more power down low. And when you're not in boost, you want to have that power down low to get you moving. The 6.1 does a really good job, but the 6.1 versus the 6.4 liter, it just cannot hang with it in terms of torque production, especially down low and especially up to 4,500 RPM or so. That 6.4 manifold is just going to walk right around the 6.1. The 6.1 does great at making mid-range power. It's designed to work with a cam with a tighter lobe separation angle, so there's that. But you know, that manifold on the 6.4 does a really good job. So just know that that's what your trade-off is. A fixed runner manifold is always going to come up short against a variable runner manifold. You're just able to take advantage of the torque production of these. You've never seen a 6.4 manifold. I mean, I'm not kidding. They're like that long. I mean, they come in and then snake around. They're long runners, and so they make a lot of power down low that you would probably miss with that 6.1 manifold. Doc Diff's hitting up Rift with a PM. Tuck's saying, hey, Dr. Diff, do you have a drink? Oh, Tux is reaching out to Dr. Diff. Very cool. Doc likes him some Ferraris. I like calzones too, man. They're nice. Rift's saying, everybody keeps telling me I have to take the cats off my Hellcat because I'm on E85 now. No, not necessarily. I mean, not really at that power level. I wouldn't think that would be altogether necessary. I mean, first of all, yeah, there's a little bit more exhaust mass, but I mean, dude, you're going 140 miles an hour. I mean, do you think that the cats are really holding you back? Probably not. By the way, Robert Eaton's got his cats on his car. That car goes 970s, 140, no sweat. All the demons are running, you know, anywhere from, you know, depending on where they're running, the conditions, you know, low 10s to high 9s. Stock catalytic converters. I don't see you really taxing anything or hurting anything with where you're at with that car, with the cats. And then Doc saying, nope, E85 is actually safer for cats. That's true. E produces less emissions and it has a cooler EGT typically. Riff saying they wouldn't even smog his car because he had a catch can on it. That's crazy. That's nuts, dude. What the God. A catch can. Something that has literally no bearing on anything with that car. A catch can. Golly. Has no bearing whatsoever. In fact, it in a perfect scenario would actually improve the emissions of the car. That catch can. Anyway, Sovereign saying, hey, B, what's up, Sovereign? Hilmo saying, would it be a problem if I ran intake long tubes and a Warlock cam with the stock muffler to keep the sound down on a 5.7 truck? I wouldn't run the Warlock on a 5.7. I think it's a little bit too much cam unless you're going to hit it with a significant shot of nitrous. And when I say significant, we're talking 150 plus. I would run the Joker on that thing all day. And of course, Doc Diff has got data on that cam in a truck, and apparently it works pretty darn good. So the stock muffler, it's not going to make it's not ideal. You're probably going to be down with that stock muffler. You'll probably be down about 10, maybe 12 horsepower. But, you know, put a MagnaFlow back there. It'll sound good. It'll be nice and mellow. Put a big MagnaFlow on it. You don't have to make it loud. And see, and that's where a lot of people get it wrong. Aftermarket exhaust doesn't mean or have to mean loud. A big old MagnaFlow back there will shut that thing up pretty good, and it'll sound good. It'll give a nice mellow tone, and it'll flow like you wouldn't believe. So yeah, I'd go that route. Dr. Div saying, cats? What cats? Dr. Div saying, Hilton mode, absolutely. The muffler have zero effect on flow, really. Long tubes are a must on any aftermarket cam. True, yeah. Riff, thank you very much, man. Just popped up saying, I think what's going on with the smog thing is that they're just trying to make more money off the aftermarket selling their parts like they do here in California. The thing is that the parts themselves cannot be, the hardware can't be the defeat device. The customer service can't be the defeat device. And that's really the way that I see it. The problem is that the aftermarket hasn't been cool, if you will. They just haven't been cool with the customer. And here's the other thing. This is why part of me, I'm not taking anything away from the aftermarket at all. I'm taking no pleasure in this to say this, but I mean, damn it, man, did you bring this on yourself? Look, when you tell people that your cold air intakes make 15 horsepower, but they made nothing on the dyno, and they did nothing at the drag strip, and they did nothing on a timestamp on the street. When you tell people that a catless mid-pipe will pick up, I don't know, 10 horsepower, when you keep selling the parts to people that you know are going to run these things on the street, and you're not qualifying them, saying, look, this is not over the phone. I know it's in fine print somewhere just because it's legalese, but over the phone, if somebody, places the order, or there's not a checkbox that says, I am not running this on the street, this is a vehicle used in closed course competition, there's not enough of an emphasis put out there to say, we have to ask this, we have to tell you this, we have to be upfront with all of this, because if we don't, we can lose our jobs, basically. So I guess what I'm saying with all of that is, yeah, in a way, it's a way for them to make more money with certifications. And I would love to be able to, like MyTune, if I could get MyTune certified, like, yep, look, put the car on there, everything's cool, makes a bunch of power, nobody else can touch it, and they're not running catalytic converters, by the way. Haha, pat myself on the back. Now you have an emissions legal tune, and it's emissions legal all over the planet. So that may end up being a thing, and the cost to tune the cars goes up. But you know what? You can't put headers, and you can't put heads, and you can't put cams into these things without tunes. And this is something that always got on my nerves too. How is it that folks will try to say, I've got the best heads, I've got the best cam, custom grind cam, I've got the best exhaust, I got the best everything else, but then try to go cheap on the tune. The one thing that makes all the parts actually work together. Never could understand that. Somebody said, I can't believe it's going to cost $1,200, $1,500 to tune my car. And you look at their list of receipts and they got, I don't know, $12,000 in parts in the car. Didn't have a problem spending that money. Anyway, going a little bit off there on a tangent. Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh, Hilton Mode's hanging out with Doc Div. Thank you again, Rift. I appreciate it, brother. Definitely appreciate that. Oh, and Rift saying aftermarket parts makers have to pay more to sell their stuff here in California. Yeah, they do. Talking to damn tree huggers. I tell you something. It's funny. If it weren't for, see, this is the funny thing. And again, I mean, I can, this is a topic for another. In fact, I don't even do normal videos anymore. I'm basically just doing the live show now, which I like a lot because I get to hang out with you guys. I was thinking about doing a video that basically was the evolution of the, I don't know, where we are today in terms of making horsepower. Do you realize there is no way in hell, if we didn't have fuel injection, better fuel economy standards that forced manufacturers to switch to fuel injection, then to switch to computer-controlled fuel injection, adjustable camshafts, then sequential port fuel injection, the whole bit, all that in an effort to generate higher efficiency, which then made horsepower numbers go up, which meant that you could run things like superchargers and turbos and all this other stuff, make all this extra power, all in the name of efficiency and fuel economy. It blows my mind. If you're still trying to do that with carburetors, you wouldn't be able to get anywhere near this. So all this stuff really isn't a bad thing. It's just, it went through a really ugly duckling phase. And that's where a lot of the pushback is coming from. On the performance side, you're dealing with a lot of guys that are used to the old pancake style catalytic converters, which robbed a lot of power. Cars with smog pumps that pumped air into the exhaust system to help light off catalytic converters. You had EGRs that were aggressively recirculating exhaust gas into the intake manifold, causing other problems, as well as reduced ignition timing and reduced compression ratios. You've got guys that grew up during that era where you did lose a lot of performance through all of that. No question about it. You'd pop the hood and it looked like just worms everywhere. You got vacuum lines going here, vacuum lines going there. A lot of transitional technology also thrown in the mix. and you found yourself in this situation where, guys really couldn't work on their cars anymore. There's a lot of animosity to the automotive industry because of that. It's like, oh, this emissions crap. Well, yeah, kind of. But the thing is when it's working right, it doesn't really hurt anything. And the lower compression and everything else that comes with that, well, yeah, that does hurt some things. But as technology grew and as technology advanced, all of that stuff went away. And now you've got 392 with practically 11-to-1 compression. What's the Mustang checking in at? 12.5-to-1? I mean, you've got guys that are making gobs of power now. And they've been able to do that for a long time, and you can still do it cleanly, which I always thought was pretty cool. So anyway, it is weird. It's a little bit different time, but it is what it is. And I'll be honest with you, man. Foxy, 1989 car. I don't even have to have catalytic converters on that car, and that car has catalytic converters on it. So if that tells you anything. Let's see. Oh, Rip is saying that it talking about the parts. If you can even get the parts in California to begin with, very true. Tux is asking if the comments were removed because he asked me, how's life? Not that I saw, but life's good, man. I hope life's good for you too, buddy. But no, I didn't see him. I didn't see him, man. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, life's good. Hope everything's going good with you too, buddy. Dr. Dude saying, Sovereign Knight in the house. What's up, man? What's up, man? But yeah, Tux, sorry about that, brother. Everything's going good. Sirens at and Dr. Diff say sells auto say got a 2011 Charger RT retired police car, and I was wondering if you would know how hard it would be to swap the shifter from the column to the stock area. Are you talking about from from a column shift to a console shifter? I don't know. I've never done that before. You may need a shifter module for that. It's a 2011, so that would actually, no, you know what? That would be linkage. I'm not sure, or is it still electrical module on that one? I can't remember. Dr. Diff would be a better resource to ask about that. I can tell you that the protocol for the 392, the shifter has its own module itself built into it. It's one of the reasons why if you put like one of the cooler looking Barton shifters in an automatic, you have to keep the shifter, the original stock shifter, kind of hidden in there because it houses the module itself. But I don't think the older stuff does that. So never heard about moving a shifter from the column to the floor before, which is the one I'm guessing you're talking about. Probably not that difficult though, I wouldn't think. Especially if it's just electronics. That'll just be the difference of just running wires from one point to the next and then deleting the column shifter. Kobe's asking, what is up with the Hellcat eating oil like crazy? I guess I play too hard with the car. Man, I don't know if your car's eating up oil like that. Usually Hellcats are the other way around. Hellcats are extremely robust, and even for the guys that are running catch cans, you'll find that they're not really collecting much out of them. So if yours is consuming oil, I would be kind of surprised because most of the ones that I know of are typically pretty clean running engines. Dr. Div saying, yep, MagnaFlows are definitely good at toning them down, and they flow their asses off for sure. Saying, I love the sound of Flowmasters. Yeah, dude, man, see, Flowmasters with an H pipe, that's probably my all-time favorite sound on any car. It doesn't matter. I mean, dude, it just sounds so good. Plus, with an H pipe, you don't really lose anything by running a chambered muffler. Oh, Tux is saying that his stepdad just got a new car. It's an 08 Honda Accord. Reliability and very easy, smooth to drive. Good car. It'll last forever, and it'll never go out of style. A lot of people, it's funny. We're always talking about hot rods, but it's the dailies that you have that are also or I'm sorry, they're always the most endearing. I had a buddy of mine that had an old Accord. It was like a 94-ish, I guess, Accord. It's the one that looks like a freaking doorstop, okay? That dude, I don't know, he might still have that car. He drove that thing through college. He drove it through the first 5 years of his job. He got a truck after that, kept that thing in the garage, cleaned it up, and would just drive it around. I mean, the car was really good on gas, used it for road trips, things like that, but maintain the hell out of it. If you change the oil, keep that thing running good, it will run forever. And the thing about dailies, and I've never done a video on this, but I've been wanting to, and it's kind of hard to put a video like this together because y'all know I don't do any editing. It's just me and you talking. It's all one take. There's no, if I screw something up, there's no hiding it in editing. If I screw it up, I screw it up. I'm a human being just like you guys are. So, but anyway, the thing about dailies is that you will develop more memories in a daily than you ever will in a hot rod. Usually the hot rod, there's some kind of, I don't know, how do I put it? In the car that you built, like in your hot rod Mustang or in your hot rod Mopar or whatever, there's a certain anxiety that can come with that. Will it break? If I race somebody, etc. You don't worry about that kind of stuff with a daily. You don't worry about nicks, scratches, dings, or anything like that. You just keep the oil changed. You go out there, you fire it up, old reliable cranks up, drive it to wherever you're going, and you experience the world in a direct manner through your daily. You experience your hot rod in the world when you're driving the hot rod, if that makes any sense. So, man, don't let him get rid of that car, because if it's maintained properly and he keeps the fluids changed, keeps tires on the thing, it'll be a great car forever. And like I say, to be honest, I've had a lot of good ass times, quality times with friends in old beaters and old Hondas and, God, what was that piece of crap? Tempos. Done some really stupid shit in those kind of cars. Anyway, yeah, those are going to be good, man. Saying he used to have a Camry. Yep. Riv saying preach. I like it. Dr. Div saying tuxedo. Oh, it might be because the comment is completely off subject. This is more of a chat. Good for knowledge and fast cars. Although I didn't remove them, they were irrelevant. Yeah, and just saying that's the way it goes. Yeah, a lot of times also too, mods may remove them, comments if they stray too far off of topic and off of what people are here to chat about. So that's another reason, Tux, that somebody may have removed it. PBR saying, good evening. Another great Mopar chat live. Thank you very much. Dr. Div saying, at Mike, change the fluid every 30 to 35,000 miles. It's a little overkill, but fresh fluid never hurts. Very true. Riff, thank you very much. Saying, I also feel like here where I live in the Bay Area, the cops put us car enthusiasts and sideshow people in the same category, which does not help. That's a very true thing. Yeah, I used to live in that area. I know exactly what you're dealing with. And yeah, like I say, man, that does kind of suck. If you have a car, one of the late model cars, they're gonna wrap you into that. Do you remember when they did the world's biggest sideshow at Candlestick? That was a freaking, I didn't go to it. I just remember seeing it. That was funny. Hill Mode saying, truck intake manifold need porting with the 85 millimeter throttle body. Yeah, for sure it would. It's tough to get that opening that big though. But yeah, you can get it fairly close, but I would say a ported stock throttle body would be a better way to go with that than a true 85. Sovereign's asking, what do you think about those dual Helions going on Racer X's 5.0? I'll just say this. It's not the turbos that I'm worried about. It's everything else that happens after that engine that I'm more concerned with. You got to remember that 10-speed, it's a great transmission, but you have to build it up. You can't just send it off into the world and think that it's, video game indestructible. It doesn't work like that. And a lot of the Mustang guys will have you believe that it's just a blower and a tune away from being a 9 or a whatever sounds fast second car. It doesn't work like that. And you can tie up 25, 30 grand into a Mustang pretty quickly. Now, granted, you're going to have a fast ass car, but just know that it's real easy to spend a real significant amount of money on one of those cars in a very short amount of time and run into all the same problems that you would run into with any other car once you start modifying. And I think that's where a lot of guys kind of go wrong when they start looking at platforms and they buy a platform based on potential than the product that it actually is. You just run into this issue where you've got an obnoxious amount of money that you've already put into something, only to have you start locating weak links at an alarming pace. Half shafts, drive shafts, transmissions, oil pump gears, or if it's a push rod car, you're bending push rods or whatever the case is, run out of spring pressure, issues with lifters, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. It's just hot rodding, baby. That's all it is. So it kind of is what it is at that point. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty awesome once he gets it sorted out. It'll be fast as hell. Shawnee saying, catch up tomorrow drinking. I love it. Hope you're having fun out there, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution, buddy. And again, Rift, I appreciate it, buddy. Doc Diff's asking, he's asking if Shawnee still has the Barton shifter for sale. Pops is looking for one. He should have jumped on it when he had the chance, but a Hellcat came in with one and he wants it now. I don't know. Shawnee, Doc Diff is going to be giving you a shout because he's looking for that shifter if you still have it. Tux is saying, thank you for the feedback. You got it. Riff saying his Hellcat uses very little oil and he drives it hard. Mine doesn't use any oil. And it doesn't have a catch can. And it's got a lots of passes on it. How much is a lots? I have a lots of passes on that car. Amanda's saying that she changed the oil in my sister's 98 Civic today. Very nice. Found metal shavings in the oil pan. I think it's the thread from the drain plug because it didn't tighten all the way and there was none on the dipstick. Youch. Okay, so in that respect, that's something that happens to happen a lot. It's a major pet peeve of mine. When I first got Revlon, here's the funny thing. Revlon was dealer maintained for its entire life with its original owner. And somebody apparently thought that it would be interesting to see how tight you could put an oil drain plug into a drain pan on that car. I've got pictures in one of my older phones. I may have posted them up on the Instagram page about 1 million years ago. In fact, they might be on there. With me with a pair of channel locks gripped onto that thing. And I almost thought the car was going to move a little bit. I was torquing on that thing so much and it finally popped off of there. I actually thought I was going to have to drill that thing off of there, which was going to mean that I was going to have to drop the pan and it was going to be a complete disaster flick. So anyway, yeah, that sucks. The only amount of torque that you need to put on a drain plug is just, and that's it. You get it to where it stops turning and you go, and that's it. Always get a new gasket whenever you change oil too. A lot of folks forget to do that. Just go over to the help area, just get a new plastic washer gasket that doesn't cost you anything and it definitely helps. Let's see. Oh, Rip saying he drives this really hard on E85. Yeah, and E85 is, yeah, but you're changing your oil a lot though with that car though, running on E85. So man, I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. Thanks again, Sean. Hope you're having fun, brother. Riff saying, take a shot for me, Sean, for sure. Take a shot for me too, man. Just make sure you're not driving. Uber that thing home. Summer saying, I used to have a 97 Accord. Damn thing leaked oil like a sieve. Oil got into the spark plug tubes. Turns out there was bad O-rings under the lifters. Saying it leaked oil out of the distributor, leaked on the hose that went to the heater core. It also had 2 timing belts, 1 main and 1 balance shaft. When that car was a pain. Some of those were bad back in the day, I know. Dr. Div's checking in with Hilton mode. Definitely porting on any factory intake manifold. There are 2 mods I've done that I expected little and got a big outcome. One of these intakes and E85. Those are my 2. Yeah, and the thing is, it just depends on how bad a shape your intake is. But when I port intake manifolds, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt anything. That's for sure. So I got some cars out there making pretty good power with those manifolds. So we're saying it was the F22B2 engine. Oh yeah. Damn. So I really wasn't into imports, but there's some of them. Yeah. Maybe I remember, maybe I'm misremembering that one not being a stellar performer. Rip is talking about, I do remember that sideshow. So what we're talking about is, how many years ago was that, man? That was probably 8 years ago, whatever. They had the world's biggest sideshow at Candlestick Park. They had, I don't know how many cars out there doing donuts for, I think, 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. Didn't get out of hand. It was just crazy people out there doing donuts in Candlestick. Hilton Mode's hanging out with Doc Diff. Doc Diff saying, my built Hemi uses a little oil, expected with 28 and 30,000 ring gap at 22 pounds of boost. Actually spiked to 28 last time I drove it because my boost controller settings were spicy. I like it. And yeah, 28 and 30 will definitely do that. But 28 and 30 means that thing will never run into problems. So that's the main good thing about it. But yeah, a little bit of oil. All engines are going to use a little bit of oil. Amanda's asking, I accidentally tightened the plug a little bit before I took it off. Do you think that could have been my fault or the last owner? The car was $800, so I really can't complain. So here's the thing. I mean, if you accidentally tightened it, if it just didn't move and you just kind of put a little bit on it, and you're like, oh man, I'm going the wrong way. And then you clicked it and, lefty-loosied it, and everything was good. If you went righty-tighty up to the point where it went righty-loosey, then yeah, that would have been a big problem. But typically, no, you're stripping out threads is actually really hard to do. And unless you're just, doing pull-ups on that thing underneath the car, I doubt you would have done anything detrimental to it. I mean, it's somebody putting that thing on there with a mechanical, like with a wrench, like with a thing you go, like that and put the thing in there. Well, that felt kind of cool. As opposed to just putting it on with a normal ratchet, Sovereign saying F22B2 was a single overhead cam, no VVT, and was a dog for horsepower. A lot of those engines back then were pretty bad. Chuck saying, hey, B, I got a question about my RT shaker. Is there a major difference between 5W20 and 020 full synthetic? I've been running full instead of blend. No, there's not. So let me tell you something. The main number you're looking at is the 20 number. That is going to be an energy saving oil, that 20 weight. The 20 weight, shouldn't really be called weight, but it's a 20 viscosity. Some people call it weight, and I think where that comes from is it's a weighted comparison. So somebody's going out making hits. By the way, yes, the shop is located very near Velocicito. Velocicito is where you go to do all of those naughty little things that you do when you're hauling that ass in your motorized go-fast vehicle. So anyway, I'm surprised that's the only one we've heard tonight, because there are quite a bit. Well, I guess 2K's already done, and I think a lot of folks might be at the bars watching the fight tonight. Ngannou versus Stipe. So we'll see where that goes. Is Tyron Woodley fighting tonight? Hopefully he can. I don't know. I'd like to see him start doing a little bit better. I used to love watching his fight. Smart fighter. Anyway, yeah, so we're close to Velocicito. The other night, by the way, I was up here working, and it was pretty fun because it was just car after car after car, pass after pass after pass, going out and making hits. Anyway, sorry, getting back to the oil squirrel. That 20 is more like a weighted comparison. So the 20 number is your hot number. That number is what is more or less the comparative rating at 100 degrees Celsius, if you will, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason why that is important is because that is, of course, the boiling point of water. And that is where most engines are going to have their oil temperature set to. And the reason for that is it gets all that moisture out of the oil and doesn't promote rusting of parts on the inside of the engine. Although there are some anti-rust compounds in the oil, simply not having the moisture in there to begin with is a fantastic way to keep that stuff out of there. And again, that temperature is the reason for that. So your engine is going to see that oil at that temperature will act like a 20 weight oil. The viscosity that it will carry will act like a 20 weight oil at 100 degrees Celsius. Turns out that's about 8. Your viscosity is about 8 CSE. The oil down low in the 0 or 5, that's your 0 degree testing criteria at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit or the freezing point of water. Not that that really is anything other than a really good metric to start with, and it's the flow capacity of the oil at that point. A 5 will simply flow slower than 0. But keep in mind that that is a 0 oil, it's a comparative analysis. A 0 weight oil at that temperature will have an effective viscosity of, say, I don't know, 15 or 18 or 20. So that's why it pays to know what the numbers mean and to have this in your head. In other words, your oil is dealing with or will provide a lower viscosity when it's at that 20 number than it does when it's at the 0 number, at that 0 degrees Celsius. So in other words, the oil is thicker, even though it says 0, that oil is thicker when it's cold than it is when it's hot. I know that's intuitive, right? It thins out when it gets hot. But the reality is that it does and it doesn't. It's kind of a trick thing, really, when you think about it. And by the way, for you guys who are going, 20 weight's too, back in my day, we only ran 30 weight, and 30 weight was the 30 weight and 40 weight racing. Look, back in the teens and 20s, they were saying in hot weather, just run straight 20 in your car. They knew that it got better fuel economy with those types of oils. This is something that's nothing new. But anyway, yes, perfectly fine running 0-20. Shouldn't have any issues whatsoever other than better flow characteristics in very cold weather. But once you start getting into temperatures like 70 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, right around that 20 degrees Celsius range, I think is where it kind of works out. Anyway, at that point, the oil is going to be just flowy anyway. So you may not ever even see that viscosity at that low of a temperature. So a long way to get to the point, I know. Yeah, just go ahead and run it. Let's see. Dr. saying exactly. Riff saying we put on one of the biggest meets I've seen in a while recently, and of course there was some idiots there that started doing donuts, and the SWAT team showed up. How is it that always happens? Just saying, yeah, it didn't loosen when I tightened it, but when I put it back on, it wouldn't tighten all the way. It may have been that there was something in the threads too. It's always kind of tough to say without being there, but I get it. That makes it tough for sure when you're trying to put the thing together. But for an $800 car, sometimes you're going to find some issues. Before you inspect the threads, get a new drain plug just to make sure. But before you put everything back together, it might be a good idea to chase those threads. Just make sure that the threads in the pan aren't damaged in any way. Rip is saying I had to use one of those special tools to get my drain plug off the first time when I bought the Hellcat. The ones that are used for strip bolts and stuff like that. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I don't know. This was dealer maintained too, which was kind of scary. But yeah, my special tool was a pair of channel locks. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And I thought that I was going to strip the head right off of that bolt. I thought for sure that I would have to drill it out, and thank goodness I didn't have to do that. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Tux, you got to keep that stuff to yourself, buddy. Just saying, I don't think your message was deleted, bro. Let's see. Oh, he's saying it's the third I've heard tonight on your chat, and Cletus and talking about the cars, and Cletus's cars is going on. I would have been there, but my buddy Chad got married. Jared is out there too. Oh, cool. Riff saying it's only me and Dr. Diff here as mods, and neither of us deleted it. Yeah, I don't know, man. Dr. Diff saying I think it just got overlooked. I'm moving through these pretty quick. It's been a good show. Yeah, it's been fun, man. KDC saying, hey, B, will a stage 3 cam be held back a significant amount on power with a ported 5.7 stock car intake? Just curious because it is a pain getting certain aftermarket parts right. First of all, do you need a stage 3? I mean, listen, if to put a stage 3, like an honest to God stage 3, like a max effort cam, like if you're limiting your stage numbers to 1, 2, and 3, then stage 3 is going to be your max effort. Nitrous cam, compression ratio is raised up. Everything it's a race car basically at that point. I mean, you might be able to get away with driving the thing on the street, but it would get old pretty quickly. So are you hitting the thing with a bunch of nitrous? If so, then yeah, I mean, it could that intake will be just fine, because the more duration and the more importantly, the more overlap that you have, the less the intake runner will be active. In other words, quite honestly, the less air is flowing through the intake at any certain RPM, or at least the potential, the actual draw load. In other words, the suction force on that runner is lessened with more overlap, and that would make sense. Exhaust is open at the same time the intake is open for a longer period of time, you're going to have less of a draw on your intake runner. However, at some point that is going to not really matter anymore, because the drivability of the car is going to be of ass, and you're not going to want to mess with it. So I guess where I'm going with this is define what you think a stage 3 is. I mean, I've defined it already, but if you agree with that, then what I would say is the intake will be fine. The 5.7 intake is actually not a bad intake manifold. It's a long runner design. It makes good mid-range power. With a cam, it does really well, like with the Joker cam, which is a really good cam. And it's designed as a nitrous grind for the 5.7. It just so happens it works great naturally aspirated. That's about the cam that I would recommend if you're thinking of an actual stage 3. And again, Dr. Diff's dad's car runs like a freaking beast with that cam in it. So in that respect, yeah, I would definitely look into that and go with something like that. Any more than that, though, and I'm afraid that you're going to start to give up drivability just in general. I mean, it's going to start to become a little bit of a pain in the ass, along with the fact that it's not going to pick up a whole lot more power. I think that your trade-off, power for drivability, you're on the wrong side of the fence once you get past the Joker cam, realistically. And that car, talking about his dad's car, really does legitimately haul ass. Not just for a 5.7, it's just a fast car in general. So Dr. Diff's got some kills with that thing that, it has surprised a lot of folks, because 5.7s ain't supposed to do what that car does. Dr. Diff saying that he runs 15W50 in the Ram. This is the turbo truck. But then again, it's got tri-coated bearings, and it's a loose race engine. I check bearings every other oil change. Yeah, and again, for that too, I mean, that's a pretty specific situation. And dealing with heat, obviously, heat's going to need more of a specialized oil. Rip saying, when I went from driving a Mazda Speed to an SRT8, I was surprised to use 0-40. A lot of folks are, and a lot of folks are surprised to see the oil temperatures in their 392s. One of the reasons why 0-40 is used is because of those higher temperatures. A lot of folks will ask, man, I've seen 230, 200, whatever 5 degrees, and it sounds like a big number. It's like, yeah, that's why they use 40 as opposed to a 30 viscosity oil, is so that the viscosity at those temperatures is still within that, like 10 to 12-ish CSE range. I think the highest is Pennzoil Platinum, which will carry like a 13 CSE, which is just to say a 13 viscosity at 212 degrees. Dr. Div saying he needs a Joker with a converter or an Apollo. Good bottom end and great chop. Converter will complement it and give it that hot rod feel. For sure it will. Sovereign saying, I'm trying to figure out how much I could get for selling one of my kidneys for at least a 2021 5.7 or 6.4 Challenger. I don't know, man. The kidney value, I think, would appreciate as long as they're working well. I don't know that you would want to sell a kidney, but I can understand completely. I mean, you can donate a lot of blood, though. I think you can get paid for that. Can you get paid for that? I don't know. Maybe plasma. There's other kind of medical things you can do to yourself that they'll pay you for, though. Just sometimes you don't come out the other end of those very favorably. Amanda saying, are there any cams for the 392 where you can run 7,000 RPM? If so, is it even safe? Yeah, it is. If you've got, actually, yeah, High Roller is one of them, which is almost 7. What that one spent to, like 6,700, 6,800? We got to get that car to the track. I've got a set of wheels and tires that'll fit it. Anyway, the thing is, though, is yeah, you can turn that kind of RPM, but you need an intake manifold that'll help facilitate that, and that's where the Sniper manifold comes into play. Lots of cam with that intake is going to certainly push it to 7 or 7,200. The only downside to it is that you lose a boatload of power down low. So if you want to give up that kind of power down low, you've got to put a different gear in the thing, because these barges have got to have torque to get them to start moving. I mean, overcoming inertia like that is a tough thing. So just know that coming into the equation, yeah, you can definitely spin them that high, but I'm just reminded of my LS6 that was in the Z06. That car was a riot with the stock cam. Big O cam goes in the thing. It starts revving to 7,200, but it's a dog down low, and the party didn't really start until about 4,000 RPM, and that's being nice about it. Really 4,500. So if you want that kind of RPM, you've got to have a very specific purpose for wanting to spin it that high, and you've got to be on board with much different rear gear options, converter options, things like that. You are race carring a street car at that point. And the funny thing about it is that the stock car will turn basically to 6,200. And you go, well, what's another 800 RPM? And it's not the 800 RPM to stretch it to that number. It's everything that happens and all this extra power, but you give up, that the curve goes from looking like this to looking like this. It's crazy what ends up happening with those camshafts. So you've just got to be, aware of what you're going to be dealing with. That's the most important thing. KC saying, I'm good there. I already got the Joker cam kit. Very nice. Just waiting to install at my shop. Appreciate the info. Absolutely. Let's see. Jebediah saying, talking about needing to Uber home, some drunkard was on the freeway swerving in and out of lanes, and he was surfing some killer waves. I encounter more and more idiots on the road every day. Yeah, I hear that. Sovereign's laughing. Dr. News saying the thermostat on 6.4 doesn't even open until 212 degrees. Very true. Dr. News saying Rick's car spins to 68. We should probably push it up to $7,000. I'll give you $1.50 for that kidney. California tax, that is. Amanda saying, I feel like it would fare pretty evenly with the new 5.0 if it revs that high. Actually, it doesn't. The new 5.0 with all of the variable cam technology, that's the problem. You will lose variable cam if you're trying to spool one of the 392s up realistically that high. But that being said, you don't need that much RPM to give a 5.0 a nice shot of your taillights at all. I mean, let me think about this. The Warlock cam in a 392 would do that hardcore, and the Sniper cam in the 392 does it all the time. It's a very similar cam to what Quick Brick has in his Charger, and he'll walk away from a stock 5-liter. Not running away from it, but he'll walk away from it. Oh, HU378, it's illegal to sell your own body parts here in the U.S.? That's a shame. What about locks of hair? Does that count? Like if you wanted to buy a lock of hair, would that be the same as buying an internal organ? And is there like any gray area, like fingernail clippings? I don't know. There's a lot of weird ways you can start to look at that. Like, could you sell spit? Like, I don't understand. How could you not sell something that you intrinsically own? Like, why? I don't understand how that would be illegal. Yet you can donate your body to science, and that's okay, but then you don't get any money for it. It's like, if I donate my body to science, would my surviving spouse be able to write off the value as a charitable donation? Or vice versa. Like, if my spouse wanted to donate her body to science, do I get to write off the value? Interesting concept if you think about it. Like, what would you value it at? I guess it would depend on the age and the actual use. I mean, it's kind of like valuing a used car, really, if you think about it. So let's break it down. Let's say it's an older person, but they took really good care of themselves. I don't know. I mean, how would that work? Plus, if you're an organ donor, so you can donate your organs to whomever like can use them, I guess, but you can't sell them. Like, if something terrible happened to me, and I'm an organ donor, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should be an organ seller. Like, my wife could just say, okay, look, lungs are probably in decent shape. Organs are probably in halfway decent shape. Liver, questionable, probably at one time was in good shape, probably has brought itself back a little bit. Okay, so the liver is going to cost you $5 large, and really kind of go from that point. I mean, think about it. Why wouldn't, it's a free market society, like, why wouldn't you be able to do that? That's strange. And again, I'm really also more interested in the gray area. Like the hair thing or the fingernails. Like, nobody's going to complain about that. Is that because they always just grow, and like, you don't grow a spleen? Like, if you lose a spleen, you don't ever grow another spleen back. So I guess you can't really sell that, because then you're kind of screwed, because you kind of need a spleen, but you don't need fingernail clippings. What about a finger? Like, you can make it without a finger. You can make it out without a lot of fingers, right? But could you sell a finger? Like, what would you even do with a finger? Like, I guess like at Halloween, that'd be pretty cool. Make a necklace out of it. I don't know. These are the kind of things I think about when I think about those kind of things. Dr. New saying, for FYI, for anybody wanting to give me a Christmas present, I wear a size 2021 Durango SRT Hellcat. Just putting that out there. You know, it's funny. You and I wear the same size. Interesting. You should put it out there like that. Cool. Sauber saying, I know too well these California taxes for sure. Sauber Night, hair tax. Saliva for profit. I knew some girls like that. Hilton mode brains. My 392 is neck and neck with an older GT500 to the 8. Then he walked away at 122 miles an hour to my 115. Well, that's funny. Yeah, that's something that happens a lot with the Mopars, by the way. You'll find out that it's only from a roll. And one of the most that the Mopar will lose out. But leading up to that point, I can give 9-second, like deep 9-second, like 970 cars that aren't Mopars, hell through the 8th. I mean, they are sniffing my ass all the way to the 8th, and then they just kind of start going around me. But yeah, it's pretty funny. I've frustrated a lot of guys with really fast cars with mine. They do get around me, but it's one of those things where the ride's basically the same through the 8th mile. So anyway, Dr. is saying the walk away is the best. Running away is no contest, but walking away is nice. That way they know you just overpowered them. True that. Robert saying hi. Sauer saying it would have to be evaluated by the FDA. Organ seller. Hey man, want to buy a spleen? Just saying, how much is it used? I would think a smoker or a heavy drinker should be paid more for donating their body to science. Well, you would think so, right? Because they'd already basically, like they've been doing all these chemical experiments on themselves already, right? So then the scientists would want to see that. So I agree with you 100%, man. I mean, somebody that did a bunch of drugs, drank a lot, smoked a lot, but it couldn't just be like a casual smoker, like your normal pack-a-day smoker. I want the person that's like chain smoking, filterless all day long. That's the one that I want, because somebody that's just smoking a pack a day, it's like, it might not really. But if somebody's really getting after it, it'd be like, oh, yeah, we need that. And so, yeah, I mean, you go, man, look, I got me some prime smoker lung over here, son. Paper up. Daddy needs a new set of shoes. I don't know, man. That way they can figure it all out for sure. Darby Rich, if that were the case. CFL saying the selling of organs is like prostitution. You can't sell what is perfectly okay to give away for free. Just a thought. I know that's weird. Kind of a reverse mortgage, but with organs. Guys, we are 2 hours and 15 minutes into it. I have got to wrap this up. It's been awesome. I had a blast with you guys. Thank y'all very much. Direct thanks to you guys that contributed to the cause. I truly appreciate that. Keeps me motivated. It keeps me doing the show, guys. I truly appreciate that. And the love y'all send me, man, it's definitely felt in return. But with that, guys, go out and get your shots. Keep wearing your mask. If not for yourself, then for others. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Love each and every one of y'all. Couldn't do this without you. Can't wait to see you on the next one. And with that, that's a wrap. Adios.